also been asked, if you are not getting our weekly newsletter, which is basically a collection of articles we put on our website over the previous week, please make sure to get a sign-up sheet if you're interested. Particularly now, by the way, as we all kind of regroup in regards to the abortion issue, it's incredibly important that you kind of steel yourself and get up to date on what kind of things are out there, where the debates are going. I will tell you right now, and perhaps it's just my perspective, the main theme that I'm seeing on the left, our opponents, the Democrats, whatever you want to call them, the main theme seems to be this is a religious point of view, therefore it cannot be imposed on the rest of the country. And of course, that's insane, but that's the argument they're making. And that's, in addition to that, I just posted an article today about the attack on St. Joseph's Church during Mass. They're really trying to, I think, kind of start a big confrontation with the Catholic Church. And as I've said before from this podium, one thing groups like us have to do is help our leadership keep their backbone, because they don't always have a backbone. And so we need to be loud, vocal, and so forth in response to this. Last thing I'll mention before we begin, for those of you who are attending regular, we offer 6 tickets to these luncheons for the price of 5. So if you're not doing that and you're coming regularly, it's basically one free lunch for every 6 you buy. So I encourage you, we have these out on the table, and I encourage you to think about investing in that. I also encourage you to keep your support coming if you can. Besides the luncheons, we don't really make much money on the luncheons, but there's all kinds of donate buttons on the website that you can use to support us, and I encourage you to do that. All right, may we impose on you to lead a blessing, Father? Absolutely. You could have said it from your chair if you wanted.
First of all, my advice to all of you is don't get old.
What's the alternative?
So, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you and bless you for your goodness to each one of us. We ask you to bless those who are especially involved in the pro-life movement, especially in these days of trial and tribulation. We ask that our guardian angels be called upon in times of need, that they may protect us from all harm and adversity. Today I ask that you be with us, Lord, and to bless this meal, to bless our conversations, and to bring us closer to you in union with our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Then, currently is the ombudsperson. I guess we have to say that nowadays. Ombudswoman. Ombudswoman would be kind of a mouthful, but anyway, ombudsperson for sexual clerical abuse in the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis. She had what appears to be a very Catholic education. Would that be a fair statement? She graduated from high school at the Convent of the Visitation in St. Paul, Minnesota. She got a Bachelor of Arts with distinction in psychology and sociology from the University of Toronto. Somehow I cut and pasted that out of my remarks. Got her law degree at York University in Toronto. Is that correct?
Actually went to law school in Minnesota.
All right. Anyway, after law school, she served for a number of years in the Hennepin County District Attorney's Office, where she was a prosecutor. She then went into private practice for a number of years, also in St. Paul. and then kind of moved in a different direction and studied theology in a lot of different ways, and then eventually ended up where she is today as the ombudsperson for sexual clerical abuse in the Archdiocese. Please let's welcome Victoria Newcome Johnson.
Thank you, Kevin, and hello, everybody. As Kevin mentioned, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not here as a legal scholar, nor am I here as a political strategist. So although at the end of my remarks, I can address some questions you may have about what's legally happening at this contentious time in our country in regards to abortion, my focus will be more personal, and it is through that lens that I will share the 5 things we all should know about abortion. Before I begin, I want to highly recommend a comprehensive resource which some of you may have watched live, I think last week. It was a webcast called Life Beyond Roe. Did anybody watch that? You can still access it, and there were about 40 plus leaders, including Ryan Anderson, that I believe sits on your advisory board, addressing what's next for the pro-life movement after the Dobbs decision. It's long, it's about 2.5 hours, but just put it on and you'll be amazed at how much you learn in that time period. I truly appreciate your coming here today, especially because ever since Dobbs, ever since even before Dobbs was leaked, it seems as if all we are hearing and talking about is abortion. It reminds me of another time in my life in the early 70s as the Roe case was dominating the airwaves. I was 16 and had just returned from Mexico City where I had gotten an abortion. My parents thought I was in Chicago, of all places, at a journalism convention, which they allowed me to go to because I was on our yearbook staff. My pregnancy in 1970 was a result of the first time I had sex, and I had it with a boy whom I had begun a relationship with in grade school, and that was in St. Paul. We were attending separate Catholic all-girl and all-boy high schools at the time that I got pregnant, and it was a pregnancy that was confirmed at a free clinic in downtown St. Paul, where I went with 2 girlfriends from my high school, all in our parochial school uniforms. As we were leaving, a nurse ran out to us in the parking lot and handed me a slip of paper with the name of a local man who took groups of women to Mexico City for abortions. My pregnancy, well, I decided what to do about my pregnancy right there and then on the spot. Lacking awe about the things of God, the humanity of my child never crossed my mind. It was tissue which I needed to rid myself of because I certainly didn't want to tell my parents, and I didn't want to have it interrupt my schooling or my social life. My boyfriend came up with the money, and I came up with the plan. However, what I didn't anticipate were the after effects of my abortion. When I returned from Mexico, I insulated myself from what seemed like a constant conversation about abortion. By the time Roe was decided a couple of years later, I had no reaction to the ruling. My emotional blinders were on so tight that all through college and even law school, I was able to avoid most conversations about it. I also began to avoid everyone and everything connected with my abortion. I broke up with my boyfriend. I generally started to hang out with a wilder crowd. Particular places were painful for me to even drive by, such as the free clinic in downtown St. Paul, but also my grade school, and of course, my high school. So after graduation, I was looking forward to leaving town, leaving the state, and went away for college, returned to Minnesota for law school, and there I met my husband at my first legal job. Fortunately, once married, we had to live in Minneapolis because my husband was an elected official. He was the district attorney, and as Kevin stated, I was a prosecutor for the county. So we worked and socialized with professional people who were strongly pro-choice and very politically active, many of them serving in elected offices for the county and the state. It took me years before I told my husband about my abortion, but otherwise I kept it to myself. It was my deep, dark secret. I was uncomfortably quiet about my beliefs because I did not know what they were. My conscience was cloudy. Mother Teresa would say it died along with my aborted child. I still experienced an almost subconscious sense of shame over what I had done. I eventually did tell my mom about my abortion, and she never brought it up again until right before she died. I was taking her to a radiation appointment, and she simply asked me if I had dealt with it. And with my mom, I knew she meant, had I dealt with it before God? I basically blew her off. But after she died, the weight of her question, which I now view as her parting gift to me, laid on my heart and stirred up my soul and brought me to prayer, which eventually led me to seek healing for my abortion. After sharing the story of my 37-year-old abortion with a priest who was also a counselor, he told me that the depth of a trauma can be measured by the extent we go to keep it a secret. He described our sessions as spiritual psychotherapy, treating a deep wound in my soul. I was able, through that process, to acknowledge my child after years of denying her, finally seeing her as a person whose life was unfolding within me. I repented, I mourned her death, and I would commend her to God at an upcoming retreat. For confidentiality purposes and safety concerns, the location of the retreats are kept private until right before you go, and there are a variety of venues for the retreats. The first indication that this grace-filled experience was going to be tailor-made for me was when I got the address and learned that the retreat would take place directly across the road from my high school. I overcame my fear and attended anyhow, arriving on a Friday night. On Saturday morning, a small group assignment had us individually going back to our rooms, our sleeping rooms, to make a list of people we were mad at over our abortion. I wrote down me, my boyfriend at the time, my parents who were drinking heavily at the time of my pregnancy, and I also wrote down the nuns from my high school, because in my adolescent opinion, I thought they should have seen that I was in trouble and should have come to my aid. After completing the assignment, I was returning to my small group through a private stairwell when I ran into a sister, a religious sister, a cloistered nun from my high school who had walked across the road for Eucharistic adoration. We were alone on the stairs, going in opposite directions, and she recognized me. After 35 years, she called me by my name and inquired about my mom, who had died shortly before the retreat. She had no idea I would be there. The retreats are totally private, and plus I had formalized my first name and acquired a new last name by marriage. She had come to pray for all of the retreatants, but I know that God had sent her there to help me as I dealt with the hurt and anger of being abandoned by those whom I wished would have been there for me when I was 16. Her presence and loving attention was such a personal gift of healing to me, I could hardly take it in. When I got back to my small group where we were going to share what our assignment, I actually asked if anyone else had run into anybody on their list. And no one had. When it came to the part of the retreat where we were able to name our child, I chose the name Mercy because I was incredibly immersed in an ocean of it. Bishop Robert Barron's definition of mercy really spoke to me and still does. Mercy, he says, is what love looks like when it turns towards the sinner. A year after my retreat, I had the courage to attend my 40th grade school reunion. I don't even know if they had them before then. And see people I had been avoiding most of my life. I did not know if I would see the father of our child, but when I did, there were always people around him, including his wife. And a group of us decided to take a tour of the old school where the reunion was being held. And I have no idea, and they joined in. And I have no idea how this happened, but at the end of the tour, I found myself in a musty kindergarten courtroom, face to face with my old boyfriend, whom I hadn't seen since we were teenagers, and no one else was around. It's like the rest of the people had moved back to the gymnasium. He casually asked me how I was doing, and I explained, I've been healed from my abortion. He looked at me and earnestly replied, I am so sorry for all of that. As I accepted his apology, I literally saw a weight lift off his shoulders. And I realized that this healing was twofold. And I learned not long after the reunion that he had died. Now, as promised, I told you I'd get to it, Kevin, the 5 things we should all know about abortion. We should all know that an abortion hurts babies in the womb and most everyone else connected with it. Since my retreat 15 years ago, I've become a team member for the Rachel's Vineyard Ministry and have observed the pain people are in upon arrival. And this includes moms, dads, grandparents, siblings of aborted children, as well as relatives and friends who facilitated it, doctors and other medical staff who recommended it, and some who performed and assisted in it. Teresa and Kevin Burke, the founders of Rachel's Vineyard, which is the largest ministry in the world for emotional and spiritual healing after abortion, recently had this to say about the end of Roe. Abortion intimately wounds women, men, relationships, and families. The failure to acknowledge and heal these wounds has contributed to the poisoning and division of our great country. Let us now begin a time of national healing. Number 2, we should all know that there is much support for women and families who choose life over abortion. With the overturning of Roe, that support is needed now more than ever. I don't think about it too often, but I do at times wonder, what if, instead of heading into that free clinic in 1970, I had had another place to go to learn about my pregnancy and to have a real conversation about my options. And in today's world, these options need to include continued support for moms and families after the baby is born. Also in today's world, it's important for us to demonstrate our consistent pro-life views, acknowledging tragedies in addition to abortion, which are wounding our nation, such as killings in our schools, and murderous rampages in our neighborhoods, as well as tragic deaths at our borders. And I mention this not only because it's the right thing to do as Catholics, but also because we become more credible in our pro-life stance if we apply it across the board. The little girl in me feels like my abortion was a big monster that hurt me. So when people I love and who claim to love me back support it, I feel as if they are on the monster's side. It goes that deep. Attempts at calming my reaction, and I really try not to react very much, by requesting that I respect other people's choices, can't we all just get along, completely misses the mark, since they disregard the humanity of the child in the womb and the subsequent damage an abortion causes. We can and should be tuned into when the time is right to speak the truth about abortion and correct misinformation that is circulating in the public square of social media. For instance, politely reminding people to listen to the medical experts on both sides of the issue, not just listen to Hollywood celebrities trying to be popular. I do know it took me many, many years before I listened to what my mom was really asking me about my abortion. It saddens me she died not knowing I dealt with it. Prayer is powerful for changing hearts and minds, and we may never know of its efficacy. The holy nun who came to my retreat exemplified that. She told me before she died, during a visit, which I was actually able to make to my high school, that she had no idea how significant her prayerful presence was to me in the midst of my healing retreat. 4, we should all know that some people won't listen to what we think about abortion and will often reject us for our views. I learned this almost immediately after my retreat when I naively shared my experience with some of our political friends, including a U.S. senator. thinking they might be interested in hearing from me, a credible professional with firsthand experience of the detrimental effects of abortion. No, they weren't interested. Filled with zeal, I even attended an event at our state capitol with an "I regret my abortion" sign, only to be ignored, or at least pretendedly not to be seen, by a state senator who also happened to be the best man at our wedding. Even one of the girlfriends who accompanied me to the free clinic that day many years ago holds tightly onto her pro-choice views because she says she worried about me so much when I was in Mexico for my abortion. She was concerned that I would never come back. She erroneously thinks that if I would have had access to a legal abortion in Minnesota at the time, all would have been well. I've been told I was privileged to have been able to abort my baby because of having the funds and a plan to carry it out, and then be able to continue on with my successful life as they see it. Suggesting an hypocrisy on my part for now being part of a movement that is trying to deny that benefit to others, particularly poor minority women. I was heartened recently to read an article by Gloria Purvis, a notable African-American media host, which pushes back on that mindset, entitled, "Stop Framing Abortion as the Solution to Black Women's Problems." Another thing I often hear, and I agree with, women will continue to get abortions even if they are illegal. But I believe making them less easily accessible will give women more time to really think about what they are doing and will hopefully make men more responsible in regards to the encounter that might result in a pregnancy. And this is not an endorsement, but since Roe was reversed, there's been an exponential increase in the demand for birth control and vasectomies. Number 5, we should all know that generally, people who support abortion strongly believe they are doing the right thing, even the virtuous thing. Like the nurse with the note who ran after me in the parking lot of the free clinic in 1970. And the young people in my life who grew up with Roe always being the law of the land. Because abortion was legal their entire lifetime, they believe it is moral, so are now outraged at losing what they consider a constitutional right. Some of them are angrily protesting. Others are offering to house and to pay travel expenses for complete strangers seeking to procure abortion in a state where it will remain legal. And I know Illinois will be a destination state, as will Minnesota. Companies are doing likewise for their workforce under the misguided assumption that doing so is in the best interest of their employees. I was recently viewing a young relative's wedding gift registry in anticipation of a marriage celebration tomorrow. And along with the possible choices of pots and pans, their guests were given the option of donating to an organization working hard to protect and expand abortion in Minnesota. Through gritted teeth, I chose a different present, of course, reminding myself that this couple must truly believe they are doing a good thing. And maybe someday I will have an opportunity to talk to them. Reactions to the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs reflect a polarized nation. The reversal of Roe v. Wade has solidified legal, political, medical, and personal battles across our country and in our families, which are likely to go on for years. As we enter into these very personal and passionate discourses, we need to do so with empathy, keeping in mind and heart how important it is for us not to vilify each other. That is the only way we will be able to have a civilly public or charitably private conversation with loved ones about this issue. In the hope of bringing light into the cultural darkness of abortion, as Christians, we need to remember that it is more about saving souls than winning arguments. As I end, I want you to know that I am truly at peace with everything I have shared with you today, especially because through my healing and stronger faith life, my husband, who ran as a pro-choice politician in his day, came to believe in God and entered into the Catholic Church before he died 2 years ago. At his confirmation, one of the things he attributed his conversion to, and always the politician, he actually gave a speech at his confirmation. What he attributed his conversion to was my work with Rachel's Vineyard and the community he got to know and their commitment to the pro-life cause. Thank you for listening, and God bless. Thank you so much. This is hot off the press, by the way, and it's Ryan's book, and he has I don't even know who he doesn't know who I am. I know who he is, but it's called Tearing Us Apart, How Abortion Harms Everything and Solves Nothing. And the little that I've been able to get into the book, which I just got last week, it's excellent.
We'll take a few minutes for questions, if anybody has questions or remarks. Well, preferably questions.
And I actually know some substantive law.
Oh, you want to do that?
No, I don't. But it may be if you have a particular question that I've read up. But I even popped up my on my iPhone this morning, and it's like this is happening there, this is happening, this is changing there. I mean, it's just impossible to keep up with what's going on on that front since Dobbs came down. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, just following up briefly on that remark, and some of this we've covered on our website, but she's absolutely right, the left, and I never know what to call them. I don't want to call them our opponents or the left or whatever, but they are throwing everything against the wall to see what will stick at the state court level, and they're not really getting anywhere. And this is the beauty of what's going on in a perverse sort of way. Now that we're going to be debating all this in the states, they're going to have to come up with an explanation for why killing unborn children is a great idea, and not just a few, but in large numbers, and not feeling bad about it, but actually boasting about it. And that's going to be a real uphill battle for them. This is a debate that was short-circuited in 1973, and ever since then it's all been in the courts. Now it's going to be in the legislatures and in the streets and in hearts and minds. And so, in a way, it's quite exciting, I think. But to the point about all these lawsuits, I'm not aware of any that have succeeded, other than maybe delaying things for a couple of weeks. They literally just aren't going anywhere because it's sort of like the gay marriage debate, you know, all the states, to the extent they started focusing on it, they rejected the concept. And then all of a sudden the court stepped in and erased all that and froze that debate. Well, the same thing happened with abortion. And now we're going to have that debate finally. I think you had a question here, and then we'll get to you.
So, for those of us who are in a position of possibly within the next few years, moving from an abortion tourism destination to another state that's more pro-life friendly, what is your opinion about staying and continuing to fight, or leaving these battleground states now and continuing work outside of that? It's getting really frustrating as a Chicago citizen.
Yeah. Do you want me to?
Oh, no, this is yours.
I only chuckled a little because I'm trying to establish residency in Florida as we speak, and I mean, part of me just can't wait to get out of Minnesota in regards to this issue. But I also, you know, my daughter's expecting a baby in Minnesota, and my friends are from Minnesota, and my parish community is in Minnesota. So that's really, really hard. You know, I'm going to do what I can when I'm there 6 months. I mean, my situation is a little bit different.
I'm
If
just
you were
gonna say,
talking
yes.
about completely moving, I don't know. You know, I think that you just need to make that decision on your own.
You can certainly continue your work wherever you are. There's no question about that. And, you know, to the extent, at least in the case of Florida, to the extent people are visiting you down there, or, I mean, it's still, you can still do great witness in Florida. And I'm sure Florida is not rock solid pro-life, so I'm sure there's plenty.
No, I think they had pretty high abortion statistics.
Yeah, I mean, so, but I was going to say, since if you're going to be in Florida, no doubt you'll be coming back to Minnesota for the summer.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, go ahead.
At the beginning of your talk, you identified a website that we should watch.
Oh, yes. Okay.
By the way, as always, and for the last probably 8 months or a year, a video of this talk will be on our website at Catholic Citizens TV.
Ooh, I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know who,
that's it, yeah.
it's called, if you Google Life Beyond Roe,
Yeah, you'll get it.
you'll get it.
And then, what impact is the executive order that the president signed today going to have on the Pathfinder Roe v. Wade? What is he doing?
You're talking about the chemical abortions?
No, I'm talking about the
Yeah, there's-
Biden signed an executive order directing Health and Human Services to make a way for abortion nationwide.
Quick answer is it's not going to have much of an effect, and I also suspect there will be lawsuits filed in many different jurisdictions challenging it. What we call the police powers, which is what it sounds like, are preserved to the states, and neither by executive order nor even by a congressional statute can the federal government just step in and start doing police power stuff, which is basically what this is. So I wouldn't say, you know, relax about it. He's doing all he can, but he repeatedly admits he can't really do anything with the stroke of a pen. And it's true. I mean, President Trump did all kinds of executive orders also, but a lot of that stuff is more for
Show.
for show, yeah. But there'll be, I think some parts, from what I've heard about it, I'm almost sure some parts will be challenged. I don't know that Medicaid can pay for abortions, for example, and I think that was maybe something that he said, you know, he was going to order. Well, you just can't do that. But there'll probably be lawsuits. Anybody else? Yes, Marianne.
I just want to have your opinion about this. It's my thing that they're misrepresenting the polls, for instance. Like when Roe v. Wade was first handed down, the press was issued to everybody and saying, do you support Roe v. Wade that allows abortion for the first 3 months of pregnancy? When in fact it allowed it for 9 months of pregnancy. So I think when it comes around to the various states and they propose laws on people, they may be surprised to find out
I totally agree with you. I don't take any belief in polls. It depends on how they ask the question, and you make a good point. You know, most people don't even know that under Roe v. Wade, you can abort up to, and even beyond 9 months.
And if they were given the truth, they wouldn't support it.
Right.
Exactly.
Tell us nobody that supports it.
It really depends on how the questions are asked, and then they say how, you know, this many people, you know, are pro-choice, and again, it depends on how that question was
And it
asked.
seems it's almost equal, like the 50%.
Yeah. Well, we spoke at our table over lunch about how people had different scenarios that they were sharing, but how you don't even know when you're in a group of people, you know, what to say, you know, because you don't really know what, you're kind of walking on eggshells in terms of who's going to react in what way. And, you know, when I was in a group text and someone, you know, said, yay, Roe, and no, I meant yay, Roe's dead or whatever, nobody said anything. People were afraid to even, you know, say I'm with you or I'm not with you. And it was, you know, so.
But if a vote is private on a law, people may give their opinion and vote for what they believe, hopefully.
I think also, I mean, if you follow politics, and I suspect over your life you have, you come to realize that in the middle there's a whole bunch of people who don't really follow politics, who don't really like politics, and who will go one way or the other, literally from election to election. I mean, when Donald Trump was elected, the media was completely flummoxed by the number of people who had voted for Obama the last 2 elections and then voted for Donald Trump. And it's just, so I think this is where our witness becomes so important because, as you said, you know, you show strength on this issue, and I don't mean being obstinate or in someone's face, but you show strength about this. You have knowledge about it. You're able to discuss it. You will move hearts and minds. And I'll tell you this, I don't think there's a whole lot of people who become pro-life and then down the road change their mind and decide the other way. Mm-hmm. So, you know, just hang in there is my experience. Yeah.
Did you ever do any work with Vicki Thorne?
I know of Vicki Thorne, and I know she passed away, recently, and I admired her.
All right. Again, I'll just remind you about this October 26th banquet. We haven't had a banquet for a couple of years because of COVID. I think it's going to be a really great evening. If you're affiliated with what we call allied groups such as Legatus or Opus Dei or any of that, if you have contacts, we'd really like to get this publicized. I know we have someone from, where is he? Maybe, oh, there he is.
From Illinois Family Institute.
Illinois Family Institute, and he's generously already offered to get the word out about this banquet. But I really, and if you don't know Kevin Roberts, this is not like a shot in the dark. This guy is really solid. In fact, one thing I want to talk to him about is how exactly, given how strong a Catholic he is, how does he prevent the world from trying to paint the Heritage Foundation as a branch of, I was going to say the branch of the Vatican, but that doesn't make sense. But anyway, I think it's going to be a really interesting talk. So I urge you to start thinking about that. In fact, I think in the near future we'll post a Ticket Spice site where you can start getting tickets for that. And there's only it's going to be in this facility, but it'll be the full ballroom, and there is a capacity limit. So if you're interested in doing this, you need to get your tickets sooner rather than later. All right. We have a speaker in October on the abortion issue, but we don't have a speaker in September. So I'm in the process of seeing, because we've now got the banquet in October, I'm going to see if the October speaker can be our luncheon speaker in September. But if you watch the website, you can stay up to date on that. We don't usually have a luncheon in August because too many people are out of town and so forth. So there'll be no luncheon in August. There will be a luncheon of some kind in September, the second Friday in September. We just haven't figured out exactly who the speaker will be. So thank you all for coming out, and have a good week.